So hey guys, welcome to another Warframe video, and today I want to take a quick look at Detron. Right now you can still buy Detron from Barakatir, and it seems like DE have extended the time that Barakatir will be with us this time around, since it is his 50th visit and he brought a lot of stuff, and the servers yesterday were a little bit unstable as well. But even if you don't get it from Barakatir, I'm pretty sure there is a ton of people that bought the Detron with the intent of selling it for platinum later on. So the Detron is a semi-automatic shotgun secondary, and it is an upgrade over the original Corpus Detron. Compared to the original Detron, it has a lower recoil, larger magazine of 8 rounds versus the original's 5, and faster fire rate of 4.2 versus the original's 3.3. It still does 105 pure radiation damage with only 2.5% critical chance, 1.5 times multiplier, and 10% status chance. So it's only really good for a raw damage build. It fires 7 pellets with every shot, which can be increased by multi-shot, and the pellets have a flight speed of 150 meters per second, which is really damn fast. And finally, it has a reload speed of only 1 second, and this is just excellent, especially with a small magazine. Now, unlike many other shotguns, the Detron doesn't have damage fall-off on its pellets, but the spread of the pellets is just horrendous, and you will only ever hit with about 50% of them, although this does have its upside, because since the pellets are flying all over the place, a lot of them will hit headshots. And let's not forget about the recoil, because even though this does have lower recoil than the original Detron, if you go full auto, it still kicks like a bloody mule. The build I decided to go for with the Detron is a 5 Forma build, and I've added 3 Vs and 2 dashes. The mods I'm using are Hornet Strike for more damage, Lethal Torrent for fire rate and multi-shot, Barrel Diffusion for even more multi-shot, and Gunslinger for loads and loads of fire rate. Now, this is very much a personal preference. I think it makes the weapon more fun. Now, even though the weapon only has 1 second reload time, since I'm using Gunslinger and Lethal Torrent and you only have 8 rounds in the magazine, I'm using Quick Draw to bump the reload time down to 0.7 seconds. And finally, I'm using 3 elemental mods based on the faction I'm going up against. So versus the Greneer, Corrupted, and Infested, I'm going to run Convulsion and Pathogen rounds for corrosive damage and Primed Heated Charge for heat damage. Now, versus the Greneer, this setup is absolutely brilliant because you have corrosive damage, which is great against ferrite armor, so your regular lancers, the lower level enemies, and heavy gunners. Then you have radiation, which is great against alloy armor, which is worn by the tougher units like bombards and napalms. And finally, you have a lot of heat damage from primed heated charge, which is great against cloned flesh, which all the Greneer with the exception of rollers have. Versus the Corrupted, it's slightly less effective than the Greneer, but it's still great. And this is mostly because the Corrupted have a wide variety of units that have different weaknesses and strengths, but it still deals really well with like 90% of the Corrupted faction. It's just that when you get a Nullifier with a lot of shield sprays around him, it may be a little bit difficult to get through his shields. The weaker shielded units are not that big of a deal because they don't have a lot of shields, and MOA are not an issue at all since they're weak to radiation damage. And finally, the faction this setup is the least effective against are the Infested, because they are really resistant to radiation, so you're mostly going to be doing damage with corrosive and heat. But even with that said, I took this into an Infested sortie, and the first sortie was fine. There were no issues at all. The Infested were dying pretty fast. The second sortie was kinda so-so, but it was still fine. And the third sortie was not that much of a success. It was an Eczema Stronghold, which is horrendous if you're going up against the Infested. And the weapon, even though it killed enemies, it required far too many shots. I mean, I did finish the sortie, but that was mostly because I was frost, not really because of the weapon. And I employed the brilliant tactic of, oh my god, I'm gonna die, spam bubble, spam bubble, spam bubble. And eventually I finished it. And versus the Corpus, I just shuffled the mods around a little bit, so I have Prime Heated Charge and Convulsion to boost the radiation damage to deal with all the machinery like Bursas, MOAs, and Ospreys, and then Pathogen rounds to cut straight through the shields and damage their health. And this works really well with the Corpus. It cuts straight through the shields and kills the fleshier units, and it even deals with Bursas pretty damn fast. Now, no bullshit here, this is probably my new favorite secondary weapon. Yeah, it's horrendously inaccurate, it kicks like a bloody mule, and while it does more than enough damage to go through the entire solar system and get you through some sorties as well, there are secondary weapons that do more damage, but none of the secondary weapons that I've played with thus far, and I did play with a lot of them, were this much fun to play with. I mean, seriously, for me, shooting dudes with this thing is more fun than running Static Ore or Sonic Ore with blast damage. And that's saying a lot. For me, this was sort of the love at first shot. I equipped the weapon, I fired it, and I went, ooh, this is fun. Then I added fire rate and started using it as sort of a flak cannon, just spraying the enemies with pellets, and I love it. So this may not be the best weapon in the game, but it is ridiculously fun to play with, especially if you add the fire rate, and I would definitely recommend you check it out. So I would definitely recommend you either pick it up from Barakatir or from other players once Barakatir is gone. And that's pretty much it for the video, so I thank you very much for watching. As always, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.